Hello, my name's Reverend Dr. May Elise Cannon. I still don't have much of a voice, but I'm going to do the update today. There'll be subtitles. Today is Saturday, December 7th. Today is day 428. Things have been brutal in Gaza, with more than 50 people killed in the last 24 hours. The death toll continues to rise. The total death toll is 44,664 Palestinians killed. More than 20 people, including 6 children and 5 women, killed by Israeli strikes in North Gaza and the Nusrat refugee camp. Gaza's Civil Defense Agency has said that the Indonesian hospital came under Israeli attack in the northern Gaza Beit Lahia area, where at least 29 people were reported killed in a series of airstrikes on and near Mal Adwan Hospital. That's the hospital that we talked about yesterday, where Dr. Abu Safi described such a desperate situation less than a week ago in an op-ed from the New York Times. Al Jazeera's correspondent in Gaza reports that Israeli tanks and drones operating about the Kamal Adwan Hospital are shooting at anything that moves, whether inside the hospital or nearby. Hamas on Saturday released a video of an Israeli hostage, Matan Zangacher. He was kidnapped on October 7th from the kibbutz near Oz with his partner, Alana Gritsutski. She was released in a hostage deal last year. He's still being held. Saudi news has reported that Hamas has begun attempts to locate living hostages that are being held in Gaza. This is good news. This is because a part of the ceasefire negotiations is a list of where all the captives are held. Hamas is not holding all of them, not only for the living hostages, but also for the bodies of those who've been killed. So this means there seems to be significant progress in indirect negotiations with Israel. Hamas seems to be focusing on hostages who are still alive. There are efforts to locate hostages' bodies. Qatar's Prime Minister Sheikh Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani said today he senses new momentum in Gaza ceasefire talks, specifically looking towards after Trump's elections. Qatar has been talking directly to the Trump administration. The Trump administration wants a deal before inauguration on January 20th. Meanwhile, Likud, the Knesset member Edelstein, was filmed pushing a protester who was demonstrating for a hostage deal near the lawmaker's home in North Israel near Herzliya. Netanyahu's office has contacted Knesset officials to check the schedule of Knesset votes because Netanyahu has been summoned to testify in court where he's being tried on corruption charges next week. Top Netanyahu aides argue he will not be able to testify during the Knesset votes. Syria, there is a lot going on in Syria. It's taken a very, very serious turn. We talked about how all these cities have been taken over. The province of Quneitra, near the Golan, which is on the Israeli border. It's said that anti-Assad forces have taken it. 2 rebels and a Syrian officer who confirmed their withdrawal have reported that to Reuters. The IDF announced today that in accordance with security assessments, they've decided to send more reinforcements to the Golan to defend the Golan because they want to repel these forces. They said that the UN forces are helping them in this regard. Syrian insurgents have reached the suburbs of Damascus. Opposition activists and a rebel commander reported that today. Syrian President Bashar remains in the capital city of Damascus. The presidential office said today they're denying rumors that Assad has left. The New York Times has reported that Iran is evacuating its military commanders and its personnel from Syria, including top commanders of their Revolutionary Guards force. They already had to flee Lebanon, Iraq, active. Russian Air Force is helping the Syrian military. They're calling for immediate ends to the hostile activities. We also know that 20 people were killed, reported during the fighting in the outskirts around Homs, including 5 children. Syrian rebel factions have said that they have taken over the city of Dara after an agreement giving safe passage to Damascus for senior members of the Assad regime's security. New Druze military sources have said that the Syrian army withdrew from most of the country's South Druze provinces of Sueda, leaving only one major airbase north of the city under the army's control. President-elect Donald Trump has responded to the gains of these rebels and has said that the possible toppling of the Assad regime, he said this, Syria's a mess. They're not our friend. The U.S. should have nothing to do with it. This is not our fight. Let it play out. Do not get involved. That's interesting because Israel is very, very interested in the outcome of this fight. On Friday, anti-Assad fighters had overrun the Nasib corridor, which is a crossing with Jordan in the south of Syria. This is 46 kilometers from Israel's Golan Heights. It could be that the Syrian front becomes the next front of a war with Israel. If the Hezbollah-Israel ceasefire holds in Lebanon, it could be Gaza and Syria. If Lebanon does not hold, Israel could be fighting on 3 fronts, Gaza, Lebanon, and Syria. Yesterday, Israeli news reported that Tahrir Safadi, a 21-year-old resident of the Golan, was indicted for espionage, acting as a foreign agent in wartime, having worked with Iran, who recruited him and his father. On Thursday, Secretary Blinken had a call with the Turkish Foreign Minister Fidan on the situation in Syria. The emphasis of Secretary Blinken was protecting civilians, including the members of minority groups. The Christians are deeply, deeply concerned about the situation. The rebels are very, very against the Christians and the minority groups. The secretary is calling for the conflict to be resolved according to UN Resolution 2254. This was adopted in 2015. It calls for a ceasefire and a political settlement in Syria. It has a roadmap for political transition, but there's been no real progress. In Lebanon, U.S. envoy Hochstein said what's happening in Syria is creating weaknesses for Hezbollah because it makes it difficult for Iran, which is pulling out of Syria, to get weapons in to support Hezbollah. So Hezbollah may not be strong enough to attack Israel or support Assad. So there's potentials for Hezbollah to be significantly weakened. The IDF said it struck Hezbollah targets in South Lebanon, which was posing a threat to Israel. It seems like the Hezbollah-Israel ceasefire has held. There was a suspected car ramming attack in the West Bank. A 45-year-old Israeli was reportedly wounded. Soldiers fired in the direction of the car. Israeli police said that a security guard shot a man who launched fireworks at forces in the Kalandia crossing in the West Bank. They said they found a knife concealed in the suspect's clothes. He was wearing a shirt with an ISIS insignia, they reported. Israeli Defense Forces said that Jewish settlers approached a Palestinian village, Karut, in the West Bank. They threw stones at homes. Settlers set a fire to a Palestinian agricultural property in the Gush Etzion settlement of the West Bank. That's just outside of Bethlehem. Israeli police and Shin Bet security services announced the indictment of Ahmad Wadi, who's 25, from a northern Israeli city of Shafram on security-related charges. They said he was carrying out a revenge attack on the Shafram police station, that he purchased weapons in the Palestinian Authority and he sold them inside of Israel. Houthis, the IDF said they intercepted a missile fired from Yemen that entered Israeli airspace. Finally, updates on the U.S. Assistant Secretary of State Barbara Leaf is headed to the Middle East, to Bahrain, and to Jordan. The Undersecretary of Economic Growth, Energy, and the Environment, Jose Fernandez, is leading a delegation from Michigan. Listen to this, from the private sector, like representatives to Qatar, Oman, and the UAE. What could that be about? That is about the Abraham Accords and greater economic cooperation between Michigan and Gulf countries. The delegations being co-led by the American Arab Chamber of Commerce and the Michigan Municipal League Foundation. So I'll be very interested to see how that relates to Arab American business opportunities, as those are states that have economic ties also with Israel. I was just about to close this out when dear Fael, who was my voice yesterday, I could use her today, sent me this article from The Intercept about the Al Sayed brothers, American citizens. They lost their mother in a bombing. They thought the White House could help them. There's an article called "The White House Gave Israel Coordinates to Save an American Family, and then Israel Bombed Them Again." I won't go into the details of the story. We see this happening time and time again. In Rajab, the 6-year-old who was on the phone with aid workers, ambulance drivers coordinated with Israelis. They were killed. Hind was killed. World Central, kitchen workers. They coordinated with Israelis. Their envoy was hit 3 times in a row. Many people aren't aware. The St. Porphyrius Orthodox Church, all the churches coordinated, sent coordinates to Israel. The government, the security forces, and the St. Porphyrius Church was bombed. According to Nihad Awad, executive director of the Council on American Islamic Relations, the second attack on the Al Sayed brothers' family, despite the White House being involved, the White House gave the coordinates to Israel, and Israel bombed where the White House coordinates were given. This is because, according to Nihad Awad, the Biden administration has the inability to deal with allegation of civilian harm by the Israeli military. They do not hold Israel to account, specifically the Israeli military and the Netanyahu government. The U.S. has so much ability to hold them to account. There is no pressure from the White House. Awad said this to The Intercept. The White House, by this very action, giving information to the Israelis, shows that they are incompetent. They do not have the resolve to hold Israel to account. My perspective, the U.S. is not only complicit, but participatory in the ongoing killings that continue to happen every day in Gaza. And we're supposed to be encouraged because there's positive sentiments swirling around the political front about a possible ceasefire deal in Gaza. Every day, the escalations on the ground continue. Dozens more die. There's multiple fronts of warfare. Anti-Assad leaders are taking over in Syria. It looks like Israel could be fighting on multiple fronts: Gaza, Lebanon, Syria. May we find a better way. War is not the answer. As Advent continues, may we pursue peace, not arms. Join us and our friends in the UK and around the world in advocating for Advent, not arms, this holiday season. God go before us in the name of Christ.